What did we just witness at the Etihad? For large stretches of the match, it looked like City would finally be walking away with a win, but another late implosion sees Amorim's Reds walk away with all 3 points. There's no time to waste, so let's see what crazy changes Pep made to City's tactics in possession. You would think the recent poor results would see Pep becoming more cautious, but when backed into a corner, Pep's approach was to take even more risks and become even more aggressive in possession. We've become accustomed to Guardiola's 3-4-3 in possession this season, using either a box or a diamond midfield, with 2 inverted fullbacks. But Pep heavily changed his tactics in this match, taking a few pointers from his old tactical approaches. When City were in possession, they were in a back 2, something we rarely see from Pep, with his left back, Matheus Nunes, operating in this left-sided zone as a more traditional midfielder, while Kyle Walker tucked right in as the second centre-back alongside Ruben Diaz, while Josko Guardiola pushed up into the midfield, either as a single pivot when Gundogan was higher up, or a double pivot if the German was assisting in the build-up. A curious decision, but why would Pep do this? Well, the idea was genius and was actually working for long spells. If City had set up in their 3-box-3 shape, United's default shape was almost tailor-made to shut this down completely, with Mount and Diallo on the deeper pivots and Ugarte and Fernandes on the 10s. But what putting Guardiola here meant is now, whether he was a single or in a double pivot, Amad Diallo and Mason Mount early on found themselves being dragged extremely narrow. That, of course, now created a lot of potential for City in possession, and the key beneficiary was Matheus Nunes. Nunes' role wasn't necessarily as a quote-unquote traditional inverted fullback, and instead, he was tasked with roaming the left side to find space to receive the ball, whether that was higher up the pitch or more in the left-back zone, which he did throughout the 90, ending with the second most touches on the pitch. And here's the key. Getting Nunes on the ball was merely a means to an end, with the main goal being to draw markers towards him, whether it was trying to draw the right centre-back towards him, creating potential room for a runner like Foden or Haaland, or even forcing Mazraoui to be narrower initially, where City's main attacking strategy became obvious, getting the ball to the danger man with the ball at his feet, Doku, with the opportunity for an isolated 1v1. And this was remarkably effective at times, with Doku isolating Mazraoui and looking to take him on, with 11 attempted dribbles. The Moroccan was pretty resolute defensively, but it's hard to keep Doku completely quiet, so we did see him get into good crossing positions on the byline. But as we often see, on his weak foot, the final pass at times was often not quite there. But it wasn't just the left-hand side that had potential for Manchester City, as down the right, from early on, De Bruyne was already sniffing out space. Where Foden tended to be a lot more narrow and remain central, De Bruyne was looking to drift to the right, and that was because of United's extremely narrow defensive shape. When United were more passive in the press, this wasn't too dangerous, as we saw Fernandes happy to come across and cover without too much trouble. The real issue, however, came when Fernandes was either caught too narrow or high up in the press, and it was Martinez from centre-back who was forced to push extremely high up the pitch, creating a gap in the backline. But the problem for City was it was Bernardo Silva at right wing, who has a lot of good traits, but a burst of pace is not one of them, meaning he would never be able to take advantage of the space vacated, particularly against someone as quick as Dalot. So United were confident in committing Martinez, and they knew that the defense would have it under control. But this shape overall gave Pep the opportunity to lean into the stereotypical part of his tactics, which was at times being able to increase the central overload. Whereas the box or the diamond only allow a 4-man midfield, at times when Nunes pushed higher or tucked in, City had a midfield 5 against United's 4, meaning on rarer occasions, with so many men in close proximity, at times we saw shades of combination play with quick passes from City. However, they were never quite able to string it into high-quality opportunities, with City having hardly any quality open play opportunities. But this City shape also had glaring weaknesses. The transition is something that City have been struggling with all season anyway, so having one less body in defense when Guardiola was in the midfield did not help matters at all. The only saving grace was the pacey Ahmad was often defending narrow or tracking back, meaning he wasn't perfectly positioned to take advantage. But as the game wore on and United were behind, he was willing to take more risks, staying higher up the pitch, ready to run in behind and take advantage of that room. Ironically, it's a match where the pace of Rashford on the break might have been perfect had he been in the squad. But Pep also had some weird tactics when defending, tactics that Amorim was ready to take advantage of. City also began to defend in quite a narrow shape, a 4-3-2-1, with Foden and Bernardo either side of İlkay Gündoğan. Pep must have noticed how many sides of late have had outstanding success when forcing United to play wide, because their wingbacks are not really dangerous in the attacking zones. City's shape meant that Doku and De Bruyne would initially cover the central routes, meaning Maguire or Onana's first passes would often be into a wide centre-back. This would then be the trigger for the men behind Haaland to press the wider centre-backs, keeping the pivot in their cover shadow to force the pass into the wing-back. Foden and Bernardo had quite high-mileage defensive role, because rather than having their full-back pressing United's wing-back, which would have left them vulnerable defensively, Pep wanted his midfielder to move wide to apply the pressure, so that United were now trapped wide, with good defensive coverage behind them. And it was quite effective, as you can see in United's attacking distribution. So how was Amorim able to take advantage of this shape? In the mid-block in particular, City struggled, as the wide regions were too exposed. But what this meant is that United were able to begin the build-up on one flank and create an overload in that region, and De Bruyne and Doku on the pivots would be drawn across. More importantly, with Foden in this example dragged wide, to prevent Gündoğan being overloaded, Bernardo would have to come across to cover, as well as Walker, due to United overloading their left flank. So subsequently, United would be able to routinely find switches to the far side, who could then drive into attacking positions or find a man making an underlapping run. And in fact, the wing-backs and the wide centre-backs for United had some of the highest number of touches for the team. But more so than just direct attacking opportunities from switches, the constant shifting for these four men meant that they began to visibly wear as the match went on, creating more and more room on the flanks for United to attack, and eventually Doku and De Bruyne had to come off. So was this the tactical innovation that led to United's win? Well, not really. It was another case of City shooting themselves in the foot when it seemed like they had the game secured. First through Nunez's terrible back pass and somehow even worse tackle, and 2 minutes later Ederson being caught in no man's land and Guardiola being unable to clear the shot, which was not the quickest, meaning Amorim secures a massive win. Overall, for the managerial score, I thought Pep's strategy, despite being high risk, was for the most part paying off. And it was just undone by some horrific play, meaning he earns a 5, while Amorim wasn't far off, meaning he earns a 4.5. But I'm always curious to read your scores, so drop yours down below. And this Wednesday, I'm coming out with a very special edition of the newsletter, so sign up through the link down below. It's absolutely free, as always.